All right, everyone, welcome back. Quick little break there. I am going to be leading this next talk um, about intuition, using your intuition as a coach, how to feel into it, and kind of recognize the way that your intuition is talking to you. So let's dive into this. The first thing I want to talk about with all of you is kind of the different wavelengths that your intuition can communicate with you on. And before I kind of break that apart, I do want to kind of put a blanket statement out here as well. My idea of intuition is kind of that I'm going to use the phrase like sixth sense, that kind of universal nudge. We've been feeling into this in a lot of the talks leading up to this one today about like feeling into your heart and like seeing the signs that are around you and understanding what feels good to you. All of that stuff is your intuition talking to you. And this is actually the kind of stuff that I do in my one-on-one business. Not only am I the program director for Inner Glow Circle, in my own one-on-one coaching practice, I am an intuitive life coach. I help people identify how their intuition is speaking to them so that they can actually kind of use it in their life, their business, relationships, wherever they want to use it. So this is my viewpoint on this. Every single one of you watching here is an intuitive individual. You probably wouldn't be here interested in this stuff, this like self-development, being a coach. You probably wouldn't even be interested if you weren't intuitive. So all of you here, hello, intuitive people. You're very intuitive. It's just really about what way your intuition is wired, how your intuition is communicating with you. When I do my work with clients, the thing I hear the most often is, oh, that's my intuition? And I'm always like, yes, that's your intuition. Because our intuition will nudge us in ways that we might not recognize as it actually being an intuition. And largely that happens because the way our intuition speaks to us feels so natural that sometimes we don't recognize those really natural things, those senses, those feelings, those nudges as something significant because it's just so like normal, air quotes, for us as individuals. So let's talk about intuition and the most common ways that people sense their intuition. I like to call these intuitive wavelengths. That's probably the phrasing you're going to hear me use as I talk about this. So I break this down into 4 different wavelengths. All of you, every person on the planet is going to have some sort of combination of these wavelengths. Some are going to be a little stronger, some might be a little bit more soft, some, like all of them might be kind of loud, all of them might be kind of soft. There's no right or wrong, there's no better or worse. It's really just kind of like a thumbprint. No 2 intuitive wavelengths are the same. And so it's really just about identifying the ways in which you're wired. So one of let me just name the 4 ways to kind of give you a baseline here. The 4 ways you can sense your intuition are physically, in your physical body. It feels like a tingle, like a twinge, a warmth, an upset stomach. Kendall was going through some of these earlier about like the feelings we feel in our chest and our stomach. We might feel it physically, a headache sometimes, like things like this. We can sense our intuition physically. Another way we can sense our intuition is emotionally. Some people sense their intuition as an emotion, as a feeling, as happiness, as joy, as fear, as sadness, as the whole dang spectrum of human emotion. Some people feel their intuition and it's like translated as an emotion. Okay, so that is a valid way to sense your intuition. Another way to sense your intuition is mentally, kind of in your mind, in your head space, through like getting maybe like pictures or images in your mind's eye, getting thoughts, sometimes even hearing voices, things like that. Your intuition can be a very mental thing, dream state, like maybe in your dreams, You're getting a lot of intuitive information. Mentally is also another very valid way to receive intuitive information. And then the fourth way people tend to be wired intuitively is what I call more of a spiritual intuition, where the first three I just described, your physical, your emotional, your mental wavelengths, they're all kind of housed inside of our physical body here. The fourth one, the spiritual wavelength, is kind of everything that's happening outside of your physical self. Some people tap into their intuition kind of out here. And that's another wavelength that's very viable. Some of us, I'm a very physical, intuitive person. And so I get kind of trapped in my body, and I forget sometimes that there's actually a lot of like intuitive things to be had outside of myself as well. So those are the four ways that your intuition is wired. And all of you are going to have some sort of combination of this. Your physical might be out front like me, where you're like, oh yeah, I feel that physical one all the time. And the other ones might maybe not so much, and like whatever combination. I would love to hear from you all who are watching in the chat. Like, let me know which ones of these wavelengths are resonating with you. Which ones do you think are kind of the loudest, have the strongest volume for you? Physical, emotional, mental, spiritual. How do you feel like you're wired when it comes to your intuition? So physical, yeah, me too. Physical and mental, physical, yeah. Physical is a common one. Physical and emotional tend to be the two most common that I've seen in my experience doing this work. And then mental and spirituals tends to be the most rare. But yeah, feel into it. And here's the thing, like whatever is kind of landing with you, trust it. Because there's probably a reason why you're like resonating with some of those wavelengths more than others. It probably means you're kind of wired in that way. Wink, wink. Knowings, yeah, knowings can be kind of a mental thing. Like I just know things that I'm not sure why I know them. Sometimes that shows up too as like maybe somebody's giving you news that's supposed to be like new information, and when they tell you this new information, it kind of lands like, well, yeah, like I knew that in a weird way. It can land like that too. Physical, when something's met. Yeah, that's a really interesting like caveat there, Simone. Like different stimulus can also sort of tap into these different wavelengths in different ways. So you might feel more of an emotional thing under certain circumstances, or more of a physical thing under other circumstances, etc. Okay, so this is great. I love that this is resonating with you all. In the coaching world, when you're being a coach, I want to bring it back around to that. Like, how do you put this to action when you're actually coaching someone? And here's the thing, the International Coach Federation, the ICF for short, which is the governing body of the coaching industry, actually includes intuition as part of the coaching skills, of the core competencies, is what the ICF calls this specifically. They actually like name intuition, they encourage you to use it. And in my opinion, every great coach is using their intuition. It's very much part of like being able to feel your clients, to hear what they're not saying, to notice patterns that they're like kind of not noticing in their own life. This is a very intuitive thing to do, a very intuitive skill to lean on when you're being a coach. So here's my recommendations. I have a couple tips on how to actually like lean into your intuition while you're coaching someone. First, like actually tell the client what you're feeling in the moment. So for example, like if I hear a client say, oh my gosh, I'm so excited to put this thing into action, I can't wait. And I'm over here and I'm like getting butterflies in my stomach and excitement for them, or I'm feeling the joy in my heart, or I'm picturing in my mind them like leaping off a cliff and soaring into the air, or whatever it is, say it to them. Oh my gosh, Sally Sue, I literally am feeling like butterflies of excitement in my stomach for you when I hear you say that. reflect back these types of senses and feelings that you're getting from when your client is talking. It's really important. And it allows your clients this like very interesting gift to feel heard on a deeper level. Anybody can listen to like your clients' words. Anybody can hear the words coming out of, not anybody, I realize that's not necessarily a universal thing, but it's common for people to be able to hear the words coming out of someone else's mouth. But if I have someone telling me that they actually like feel my excitement in some way when I'm sharing that feels like a deeper acknowledgement when you're hearing that, like, oh my gosh, they actually feel me and are with me and are present with me. So it's very important. If you get a little twinge or a nudge or a vision about your client, say something. Say it in the moment. Reflect what you're feeling intuitively. Also, here's another thing. Really lean into the random stuff that comes your way when you're coaching a client. There's magic in that randomness. Sometimes when I'm coaching someone, I get like a thought or a question or something that seems just a little off topic. Trust it. Ask about that thing. And I like to kind of give a little disclaimer before, if I feel like I'm taking a little bit of a leap to something the client's not exactly talking about directly. I might disclaimer by saying something like, I could be off here, but ... Like, what does this other thing have to do with this? Or where is this a pattern in your life? Or what does this have to do with this thing we talked about before? If you're if stuff's coming up for you that the client's not directly talking about, bring it up. Bring it up. When I started taking that leap as a coach myself, like taking more like risks, I suppose, as a coach with my intuition, like the client didn't bring up this thing at all, but I feel like it's nudging at me and I say it anyway. Woo, a lot of times that like breaks the conversation open and it just gets so much deeper. And had I kept that to myself, we might not have gone there. So like the point of this is when you're working with your clients, like trust those twinges, those nudges, those actual feelings or like sensations that you're receiving when you're listening to your client. Of course, the secret sauce here is actually being present with your client. I can't be over here on the side, like taking my grocery list while the client's talking. And then I'm like, oh, that's a random thought. No, I'm not actually connecting with my client. But if I'm present with them and stuff comes up, trust it, say it, take that risk and ask about that random thing that's coming into your head. I've never seen it derail a conversation with a client. In fact, if you're off base, the client's gonna like steer you. The client's gonna go, well, it might not be that, but something over here. And it's going to keep the conversation going. Now, that's like my tips for you when you're actually working with a client. I also have a couple tips here when it comes to just being a business owner, running your business, because that has a kind of a different energy than when you're actually like doing work with a client. One of my favorite things to do, this is a little bit more out there, so come along for the ride with me, but one of my favorite tips that can render a lot of interesting intuitive information is having like intuitive office hours, is what I call it for myself. I set aside time each week where I am intentionally tapping into my intuition and I'm asking myself, what do I need to do in my business? For me personally, I like relationships with spirit guides. I have grandparents who I consider spirit guides. I have like a couple archangels that like to hang out with me and some other figures that I lean on in my own like intuitive practice. And so I actually like vision them in my head, like we're at a board meeting that we're sitting around a table and I'm asking them like, what's our plan for this next quarter? What are we going to focus on this week? How can I really best serve my clients? I'm asking my spiritual guide team here, what's what? And then I just have to like absorb and listen to what I receive and trust it. trust it. Sometimes I've taken interesting turns in my business or like gotten really cool new ideas from doing these types of office hours. And you know what? It becomes sort of like a fun playground experiment. Like if I'm like, ooh, that's a cool new idea. Let me go try it out and just see what happens. You might surprise yourself with what comes forward when you're just actually taking the time to intentionally tap into your intuition and feel into those 4 areas. Like when I do my office hours, I check in physically, I check in emotionally, I check in mentally, I check in spiritually, and just see what comes forward for me and how that applies to what I'm up to in my business and with my clients. So that's that. Like, and I encourage you all to just start checking in with these 4 wavelengths in your day-to-day life. How you're wired is going to show up a lot. Like it can show up when you're getting checked out at the grocery store, for example. Like trust those nudges, take those moments to like, ooh, I'm feeling a shift in my emotion. Like, let me check in. Like, is this intuitive? Am I feeling something going on around me in my environment? Or am I just, is my mood shifting? Who knows? But check in with these 4 wavelengths throughout your day-to-day life. And then when you get into these moments of like actively trying to use it with a client or actively trying to like put it into action in your business, you've already flexed that muscle. It's like flexing muscle. The more you do it just kind of through your life, through your day-to-day, the easier it's going to be to put into action when you're actually like, now's the time, let's do this. Magic. Cool. That's my talk for you all. I see a question already in here in the chat, but we're in our Q&A. So put any questions you have in the chat. If you're watching on Facebook, you can put them there. Please be a little patient with me because I am clicking between all the places. I don't want to miss any questions. If you have a question you want to ask me verbally, you can also raise your hand if you're here in Zoom, and I can unmute you and you can just ask away. But let's go to this question from Danielle. What can you do to understand your feelings? What if I'm feeling something with a client, but I'm not sure how to interpret it? So one thing I like to do if I'm sensing something, like let's use emotionally, for example, because that's kind of sounds like what you're referring to there in your question, Danielle. Like, let's say I'm suddenly feeling like a shift of like nervousness or something emotionally. And I'm like, ooh, what's that about? Am I just like feeling my client's nervousness? Am I just suddenly nervous about something? Like what's going on? A lot of times what I will do is sort of default to another wavelength. So like emotionally, like, ooh, I'm feeling nervousness. What does this mean? I'm not sure. Let me ask my body what it feels. Or let me ask my like mental space what it has to say. Or let me reach even out of my body. Let's get out of my body all together. I'm going to feel out here and see what it has to say. Sometimes those other wavelengths will like confirm what you're feeling. They'll like give you more information that makes it more clear. That's really my go-to method is if I have uncertainty about something I'm receiving or sensing in one of those wavelengths, I jump to another one. Let me check in with another one. What do you have to say about it, body? Oh, I'm just nervous. Okay, great. I can move on. Or, my body might tell me that it's my client. Like, however you're sensing it, trust. That's really, your intuition is going to communicate with you in kind of like illogical ways is the phrasing that's coming to me in this moment. Like, not all of it's going to make sense. Okay. It's just about following those little threads or those little breadcrumbs that your intuition is putting out there for you. Does that answer your question, Danielle? It's my favorite method. Awesome. What other questions do you have for me? Lay them out there. I will say here, I'm looking at I wrote down some common questions people ask me about this. Another thing I like to just note here too is you have the ability to like strengthen any of these wavelengths you desire as well. So like, let's say you're like, oh, I really want to like be really a solid spiritual intuitive. I want to get out of my body and I want to tap in out here and expand myself. Great. The cool thing about intuition is it's very tension-based. That was more of a mouthful than I intended. If you sort of like intuitively desire to do something, it's kind of like, and so it is, honestly. Or if you desire to have a certain question answered, so it will be. Start paying attention to those signs. Sometimes I like to play a game with my intuition, and I will actually like give my intuition sort of like assignments, for lack of a better way to describe it. Like I will be like, okay, I'm confused in my business. I'm thinking about starting up this, like maybe a new wing of my coaching business. I'm not sure. It'd be like kind of a stretch for me. I'm not sure if anybody's interested. What do I do about that? Well, here's the thing. It's kind of ask for a specific sign is what it boils down to. Sometimes I'll be like, okay, universe, my guides, intuition, God, whoever, spirit you want to like put the call out to, say, send me a sign. Whenever I am on the right path, send me a blue bear. I'm picking something random in the moment. And actually say it out loud. I call this like have a talk to the wall moment, like where you're literally just talking out loud to the wall. Okay, universe, send me a blue bear when I'm on the right path. Sure enough, if you like set that intention, don't be surprised when a blue bear like randomly appears on a billboard as you're like sitting in traffic going to the job you hate or something, like, and you're thinking about how I want to quit my job or something. There's a blue bear. Don't ignore that stuff. That is like a very clear sign. So ask for what you're looking for too. That can be really, really helpful to set like specific signals, or maybe it's a feeling that you get, this one unique feeling, like when I'm on the right path, I want to recognize it. Or like, I want to know when I'm like in a healthy relationship, I want to feel a certain way. And then it, like when you feel that feeling, you're like, oh, that's my indicator that I'm like, this is healthy. Let's see, we got some questions coming in. What about differing between intuition and fear? Whew. Yeah, here's the thing, like there's an interesting, some of those sensations that you feel intuitively, it's like there's a fine line between like fear and excitement. Sometimes like the butterflies on my stomach, I'm like, wait, is that excitement or is that like I'm scared or nervous? Those nudges can be similar. So this is also where I like, this is my method. I kind of default to another wavelength, right? Like if I'm emotionally feeling fear is an emotion. Let me default to the spiritual thing and see what it has to say. Let me default to my physical body. Maybe my physical body is suddenly like feeling like it's going to do a song and a dance. Like that's telling me, ooh, maybe this is more intuitive. Here's the thing about intuition too, and what I've found. Intuition is far, far, far more likely to try to steer you towards something that's actually like in alignment with you than try to be like red flags or warnings. Usually, this is a broad brush I'm painting, so there's nuance here, but often our intuition is going to steer us towards the things that are best for us. So that can also help eliminate the fear. If I'm choosing to trust my intuition, I'm trusting that like this nudge that I'm getting is actually like the way to follow. Simone, does that help? Let me see this other question here from Daniel. How do you handle a client that is in denial about what is happening? Ooh, yeah. For me, I just leave it, honestly, to be really just like direct about that response. People aren't going to, it's just like with anything, people are only like able to see as far as they're like willing to go, kind of like in that regard. So just like, as you know, as coaches, as we do, we can certainly stand for people about what's possible and what we see as possible for them and hold them in their greatest possibility and all that great stuff. However, even if intuitively we're like, I know what's what, that doesn't mean the client is there, right? So just like any other like coaching things, we can hold up that mirror, we can encourage, we can like show possibility and options, but we have to then trust our clients to choose what's best for them. Plus, like, we might not be purely feeling the client. We've got our own stuff that's like mixed in with our intuitive stuff. So the client's going to know best. Their intuition is going to know best. So it's also like intuitively trust what other people are choosing for themselves in the moment too, as well, Danielle. Are my thoughts. Let me check Facebook here. Oh, well, thanks, Simone. I think you're awesome too. Cool. That is my spiel about intuition. I encourage you all to just like go put your literally like your feelers out there as you're living the rest of your day and see what comes up for you with these 4 wavelengths and see if that brings any more clarity about how your intuition happens to be wired. If you want to get a hold of me about intuitive stuff, my information, my personal information is in the workbook on page 13. If you're wondering how you do stuff like me, my background's very diverse, but I landed here in the coaching world for very, very many reasons. And so if you're curious, like you want to kind of become an intuitive coach yourself or explore this even more, coach training is a solid path for people who are doing intuitive type work and really give some like credibility and legitimacy behind your work. So now we're in enrollment for coach training. 'Tis the season for coach training. So I'm going to pop a link here in the Zoom chat for all of you who are here on Zoom. You can book a call with Katie or Liv to talk about coach training. It starts on the 31st of this month. So we are in the last couple of weeks of enrollment. If your intuition, check in with your intuition about this. Like, is coach training the next best step for me? And then trust what comes forward. It was a big leap for me to go down this road, and I just had to trust. And I'm like, just like Charisma was saying earlier, like, whew, I'm glad it turned out this particular way. So check it out, book a call with Katie or Liv, and you can talk about coach training. So let's take another quick break. We've got up next, who is next? Roselle, yay. Roselle Cabayas is going to talk about growing an organic social media fan base. So we're going to kind of think back into marketing social media presence in a couple minutes here. So let's take a quick break and I will see you back here at 4:30 Eastern.